Russia apparently facing a major setback in Ukraine.
Russia announced its retreat from Kherson overnight.
As it turned out, till the 11th of November, Ukraine fought for this key city for a long time, and finally, Kherson is Ukrainian again. I can boldly say that the Ukrainian counteroffensive is gaining momentum. After retreat, Russia was quiet for several days, but then it activated again. Does it mean Putin got angered and will use as many weapons as he has? Today, I'll tell you about the possible plans of Russia after withdrawing from Kherson and what actions Putin can take. Why was Ukraine unable to continue the offensive and push the Russian army even farther back? A little pause. I'm glad to see you on my channel, and I would really appreciate it if you like this video and subscribe to my channel. No more water, let's get started. On the 11th of November, Russian Defense Ministry announced the withdrawal of troops from the occupied Kherson to the left bank of the Dnipro River. Moscow claims that they evacuated all the military, 30,000 people and equipment, without damages and any losses. In Ukraine, Shoigu's statement about the retreat from Kherson was treated with caution. And of course, Russia doesn't give any gifts, doesn't do acts of goodwill. Till the last moment, Ukraine was sure it was some kind of trap to lure Ukrainian forces into, and that Russians aren't going to completely leave Kherson. And only later, Ukrainian forces became increasingly confident that the retreat was real. Russian commentators and officials have carefully avoided the word retreat, calling withdrawal a clever military call. It'll help to regroup on the eastern bank of the Dnipro in defensive positions that Ukrainian forces would fight hard to destroy. That this step will save lives of Russian soldiers. Yeah, of course they care about their servicemen. To look it more believable that this retreat wasn't embarrassing, Russia stated Kyiv was preparing a large-scale terrorist attack in the Kakhovka hydroelectric power station. In such a case, Russian soldiers will be in a cauldron from which they won't be able to get out. But not all people in Russia accepted retreat of Kherson like a temporary situation. Russian commentator Sergei Markov described the planned withdrawal from Kherson as the largest geopolitical defeat of Russia since the USSR collapsed. Despite this recent success, the Ukrainian army shouldn't get comfortable. Russia states that the forces withdrawn from Kherson will be used for active operations, including offensive ones, in other directions. Even if the Russian retreat is eventually carried out, Moscow's troops will still be present in the Kherson region, which provides a land bridge between the Russian mainland and Crimea, which Putin wanted to get. However, Russian forces will be limited to the eastern bank of the Dnipro and won't have a foothold in the west of the country. Kherson has been the only regional center in Ukraine that Russia has successfully captured since the first day of invasion. And this retreat also put the end to Russian dreams, and I mean linking Crimea to the main port of Ukraine in Odessa. So, does it mean this withdrawing from Kherson is a key point during the war in Ukraine? Kyiv can continue to push Russians back, but I think not now, because at first, Russian army destroyed the Antonovsky Bridge, which connects the right and left banks of the Dnipro. The damage is very serious. And in the second, Russian army took advantageous defensive position. Russia might focus on the neighboring Zaporizhia region and continue to attack Ukraine infrastructure as long as it can, because Ukraine is getting more and more defensive systems from Western partners. These satellite photos show that the Russian army dug trenches on the left bank of the Dnipro. The line includes new fortifications for military equipment that weren't in this place previously. That's perhaps for artillery systems. Putin might try to buy time, hoping that the mobilized can be sent for training and that they'll strengthen the fronts. Meantime, Ukrainian army reached the center of Kherson, and wounded Russian soldiers were abandoned or taken as prisoners. And again, I want to pay attention to it. Russian without any losses against wounded soldiers and warehouse of Russian weapons. Moscow still has about 30,000 troops in the region, Intelligence company Global Guardian believes that Russian side wanted to avoid the same retreat like it was in Kharkiv region in September. Therefore, it destroyed bridges, set traps, and mined the hydroelectric power station in Novokakhovka. The Russian priority is nothing more than regrouping and reconstruction. And now they have to protect the territory that is still under Russia. About 200,000 Russian soldiers who will soon be called to war will help with this. Thus, the Russian army might have space for a maneuver. And while time drags on, and it's extremely difficult to conduct hostilities in winter, the war might continue in 2023, so this withdrawal might be strategic. At the same time, the Russian army is strengthening defense position in the Zaporizhia region. Russia fears that Ukraine will attack from this side. It's very likely that Russia will again receive Iranian drones and will carry out what it does best, the terror of the civilian population and infrastructure attacks. And here's confirmation. Some politicians say now is a good time for negotiations. Only, after all, peace will be on Russian terms, which means that most of conquered territories will remain under Russia. There is another scenario for further action. The Ukrainian army might try to take advantage of the fact that Russian troops are poorly supplied. In addition, when the soil freezes, the equipment will be able to move better than in the fall. Now is not the time to drag out the conflict, because then Putin will win the very time he needs. But no one said Ukraine is standing still. I'm sure the armed forces of Ukraine are preparing the new offensive. And we will know all the details when everything starts. Recently, I've noticed a trend that Russia has fewer and fewer allies. At first, relations between Russia and Kazakhstan were friendly, until the last moment. Tokayev is trying to balance between the EU and Putin, but in fact, Tokayev supported Ukraine. Well, I hope so. He just did it in a very unusual way. During a meeting at the UN, Tokayev didn't condemn Russia. But then, at the meeting with Putin, he called the LPR and DPR as quasi-state territories, and that Kazakhstan doesn't admit them. I don't even know how to rate it. Also, important fact, dozens of foreign companies based in Russia already see Kazakhstan as a safe place to relocate. Not everything is going smoothly between Russia and Azerbaijan. Since spring, Russian authorities have been blocking access to Azerbaijani news sites for allegedly inaccurate coverage of the war in Ukraine. Azerbaijan, in turn, also blocked the Russian media websites. India, until recently, it fully supported Russia. The US even called this support strange respect. And then, during all events, India said it was going to refuse Russian oil. However, actions of India are very ambiguous, and it's being cautious. Politicians of India say they're against the war in Ukraine, but they are not ready to break off diplomatic relations with Russia. Looks like someone can't decide either. It seems that all the plans of Russia are collapsing before they even began. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but according to the forecast of Budanov, the head of the main intelligence department of Ukraine, active hostilities from Russia will stop by the end of spring. By the end of the summer, the war will be over. I hope it'll end even earlier than he prophesies it. Thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to my channel. See you!